Welcome back to Main Street Informant. In this channel, we provide information related to wealth, money, power, finance, business, and economics. In today's video, we will talk about facts and details about the anticipated food shortage that will sure impact the global economy. You're about to learn that we now have a lot of data that it is impossible to deny what is coming. So, we would really appreciate your support by encouraging you to get this warning out by sharing this video with as many as people as you can. However, before moving on, we could really appreciate your support by leaving a thumbs up in this video and subscribing to our channel so you won't miss the next video. While the supply chain has been disrupted since the COVID-19 epidemic began in 2020, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine, two significant producers of wheat, has made matters worse. This has fueled food inflation, which is particularly painful on the most disadvantaged. The main cause of this year's food crisis is a logistics breakdown linked to problems exporting crops from Russia and Ukraine. However, the food supply itself may be in danger next year. In July, Ukraine President Zelensky took to Twitter to warn that the country's farm harvest could be cut in half this year due to the war. In August, consultancy firm McKinsey estimated Ukraine's production of grains such as wheat will drop by 35% to 45% in the next harvesting season. This year's harvest in Ukraine will be 30 to 44 million tons less than average. Reduced farmer cash flow as a result of their last harvest's inability to be transported in large quantities and the potential for grain that was neglected or not harvested at all. Supply will probably get tighter during the upcoming planting season as a result of the war's interference with Ukrainian planting and harvesting, as well as the use of suboptimal inputs in the crops of Russia, Brazil, and other growing countries' crops. Nearly 1/5 of fertilizer exports in 2021 came from Russia, but the conflict in Ukraine has severely disrupted the fertilizer supply. According to Bloomberg's Green Market Service, the cost of urea, a typical nitrogen fertilizer, has increased by more than double from the previous year. As a result, farmers around the world are using less fertilizer. In nations that primarily rely on fertilizer imports like Brazil, lower yields are also anticipated due to fertilizer shortages and rising fertilizer prices. The quantity of grain available on the global market would probably drop as a result. The same pattern was seen among Guatemalan farmers who are unable to make investments in the following crop cycle, either because they lack the money to purchase fertilizers and other inputs derived from oil, such as plastics for padding and pipes for irrigation systems, or because they are unable to find agricultural inputs on the market. The next food crisis is anticipated to be worse than those in 2007 to 2008 and 2010 to 2011. This is because the shocks to agricultural and supplies occur at a time of extreme climate conditions, including severe droughts and floods around the world. The United States hard red winter wheat harvest this year was the weakest since 1963, but there is another significant distortion. In 1963, there were only 182 million people living in the United States. As of this year, that number has risen to 329 million. The poor yields are probably more than a one-year blip, as climate change alters weather patterns in agriculturally important parts of the country, contributing to higher food prices. In Texas, extreme weather and higher input costs forced cotton farmers to walk away from nearly 70% of their crops because the harvest is so worthless. Farmers in California anticipate that this year's rice harvest will be only half as large as it would be in a typical year. The United States tomato crops were severely harmed by the temperature increase, and the 2022 harvest is anticipated to be just 10.5 million tons less than a typical year's harvest. According to specialists at Roboback, the situation with corn crops is actually getting worse. American corn is on course to record its lowest yield since the drought of 2012, which will result in the poorest corn harvest in 10 years. In several states, thousands of cattle are dying from starvation. In many cases, ranchers are selling off their herds and sending animals to slaughterhouse earlier than usual. In Oregon, this has led to a 41% decrease in the total number of cattle in the state. The extreme heat is causing water and grass shortages, which, when combined with the higher costs of feed hay and farming equipment, are forcing farmers and ranchers to make some difficult decisions. Meanwhile, the ongoing drought in New Mexico has resulted in a 43% decline in the number of cattle. The situation is even worse in Texas, where the state's food supply system has lost half of its cattle population. In the short term, supply will increase as more and more animals are sent to meat processing plants much earlier than usual. But in the long run, there will be a severe shortage of meat, which will drive up prices. In fact, one beef producer in Oklahoma has issued a warning that ground beef prices could eventually reach $50 per pound. According to the United States Drought Monitor, around 40% of the nation has experienced severe drought for 101 weeks straight. We still don't know when things will improve, according to meteorologists who claim that this is the worst multi-year mega drought the United States has experienced in the last 200 years. On the other hand, brutal rain events are causing flooding and aggravating crop losses. In just 5 weeks, U.S. cities have experienced 5 instances of 1,000-year rain events, resulting in episodes of severe flooding that have just a 0.1% probability of happening in any given year. Experts say that soil actually absorbs water better when damp, while heavy rains slush off parched landscapes into waterways. The other side of the ocean, Europe is also experiencing the worst drought it has experienced in nearly 500 years. In some areas of Central Europe, river levels have dropped so low that hunger stones are being revealed for the first time in centuries in the Alba River, which flows from the mountains of Czechia through Germany to the North Sea. The stones date back to a drought in 1616. According to projections, the amount of corn produced across the entire European Union will drop by up to 1/5 in 2022. This decline in corn production could cause food prices to rise even higher and worsen the situation for farmers already struggling with high diesel and fertilizer costs. A recent 2 huge wildfires that broke out owing to the heat in the southwest and Gironde department damaged more than 20,000 hectares or 49,400 acres of crops in France, where farmers are finding that crop losses can affect up to 35% of this year's harvest. In its most recent report, the National Drought Group noted that irrigation options are dwindling and reservoirs are quickly emptying, and losses of 10 to 50% are expected for crops like carrots, onions, sugar beet, apples, and hops. The group also noted that milk production is down nationwide due to a lack of food for cows, and wildfires are putting large areas of farmland at risk. Germany is also at risk of suffering significant crop losses. Farmers are concerned that the likes of maize, sugar beet, potato, and soybean crops could experience losses of up to 50% should rain not return soon. The damage from extreme weather is anticipated to exceed 6 billion euros, which is equal to 10% of Italy's yearly agricultural production. Some farmers in the nation have already lost up to 80% of their harvest this year, according to Italy's National Farming Union. Authorities in Somalia predict that this year's vegetable and grain production will decline by around 80% as a result of the severe drought that has affected vast areas of the country. The carcasses of giraffes, goats, camels, and droves of cattle were found in villages after starving to death in northern Kenya, according to a recent report by the United States Agency for International Development's Famine Early Warning Systems Network. Such losses can be disastrous for families who already experience food insecurity as a result of the nightmare drought that has been wreaking havoc on many parts of the world. The Yangtze River is 45% below normal levels in China, which is quite concerning given that it is affecting numerous industries there at the same time as the Eastern Giant is experiencing the worst drought ever noted. The total area of rice paddy planting in India has already decreased by 3 million hectares in August, despite the country typically making up 40% of the global rice trade. Authorities predict that production will be drastically lower in 2022 as a result of significant rainfall deficits in key rice-producing states. In Pakistan, it has been estimated that about 65% of the country's food basket, specifically crops like rice, cotton, wheat, and onions, have been washed away. Currently, a third of Pakistan is underwater after a recent flood completely devastated the country. Agricultural areas have been hit particularly hard as a result, and as a result, the vast majority of the country's crops have been destroyed. Food banks across the United States are reporting a massive increase in demand. According to North Texas Food Bank CEO Tricia Cunningham, demand for her food bank is worse than a couple of years ago, and we are serving at higher levels than we did at the height of the pandemic. The overwhelming reason why people are queuing up at the food bank is that they cannot afford groceries. According to estimates, 13 million new Americans struggle to pay for basic groceries at supermarkets. The World Health Organization reported that over 50 million people in East Africa will experience acute food insecurity this year, and 7 million children are already malnourished. Thousands of people are also fleeing their homes in search of work or food, according to a study published in July. While demand is at an all-time high, resources are at an all-time low. According to advocates with the World Food Program, as many as 828 million people, that is over 10% of the world population, go to bed hungry every night. The number of people experiencing acute food insecurity has increased from 135 million to 345 million since 2019. Additionally, 50 million people in 45 countries are on the verge of famine, and it goes without saying that this number will soon be much higher. In a public statement earlier this year, United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed his opinion that numerous famines are likely to occur in 2023. The shocks of numerous global crises, according to UN General Assembly President Abdullah Shahid, have weakened our institutions, our economies, and challenged our ability to effectively respond to these issues. We were already falling short of meeting our food security targets before 2020, but the situation is now critical. Food produced after 2022 will not be sold in stores in 2023. Unfortunately, it seems that most people are unaware of how severe the impending food shortages are going to be. This will certainly affect the world. The risk of civil unrest has increased this year in more than half of the world's countries, according to a new analysis by Various Maplecraft, a UK-based risk consulting and intelligence firm. This indicates a period of height and global instability that will be fueled by inflation, geopolitical conflicts, and shortages of necessities. Unfortunately, as global food supplies continue to shrink, the risk of civil unrest keeps on rising in many places. It's safe to say that when it finally becomes undeniably clear that there simply won't be enough food for everyone in 2023, we're going to see a lot more chaos emerging all over the world. Many populations will suffer greatly as we move into the later stages of 2022, despite the fact that conditions are not yet as extreme as they're going to get in the coming months. This is not a drill. A serious global food crisis has already started. We would like to encourage you to start preparing for what lies ahead while you still have the chance. As usual, if you learned something valuable, please make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more contents like this. You can check out more videos on the channel and share. See you in the next one.